Please welcome Robin Wright.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be back in Camden. I'm so pleased. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the hard work that was put into organizing this conference. So you're going to hear from a lot of wonderful experts whom I revere. I'm honored to be among them. But I want to do something different this morning. I want to share my Middle East with you. I first landed in the region on October 6, 1973. And when I was at the Beirut International Airport, a woman whispered to me, "The Egyptians have just crossed the Suez Canal," and the Fourth Middle East War had broken out. And I thought, oh, expletive. I've never covered a war. And I've covered every war, revolution, uprising ever since. You get sucked into the Middle East and you can't walk away. But what I want to do this morning is show you the human dimension of the challenges that are faced in the region so you understand kind of tomorrow and where it's going. So I have 160 pictures that are all mine to share with you, and I'm going to zip through them. The first 6 for the young in this room is to show you that the stereotypes don't apply. There is still a great deal of joy in the region. The first one was from Egypt. The born to rock is from Jordan. Here she is in conservative hijab, head covering. The energy in the region is to me, unbelievable. Untapped, but unbelievable. This is the Elvis of Tunisia. There's a lot of sass as well. The young lovebirds from Kurdistan in northern Iraq. The stud muffins from Amman. And the guy getting coiffed at an open-door barbershop in northern Iraq. The girls taking selfies in front of the Pigeon Rocks in Beirut. So one of the things that has always struck me everywhere in the Middle East in recent years is the way women have become part of traditionally macho society. This is a young girl carrying the Libyan flag in Tripoli. These little girls, this is the girls one of the reasons is the level of education. These are 2 little girls in a biology class in Tehran at a park, and they were bringing out their plants and planting them and learning about them. This is the graduating class at the University of Tehran. One of the striking things is that 64% of the university student body in Tehran and somewhere around 60% in Saudi Arabia is female. They are in many places, in increasing numbers, getting more higher education than their male counterparts. Now, these are 3 of the professional women in Turkey. And one of the problems is with greater education, they are not getting the job opportunities. Across the region, females in the labor force tend to be between 10 and 20%, even though they are 60% or more in several countries in the universities. Now, hang on. The region is clearly in transition. This is a woman carrying her goods in Cairo. What I love about this picture is that she's in front of a lingerie store where the young are shopping. This always strikes me, the lingerie shops that are kind of not what you'd find even 10 years ago in the region. So one of the points here is that a young woman covers her face and then, when asked, will take it off and have a conversation. So I want to get into the politics of the region. This is a piece of graffiti I captured in a place called Sidi Bouzid, which is a town in the conservative heartland of Tunisia. This is the place where the Arab Spring began. And this is the fruit stand where it began, when a young fruit vendor was asked by a police officer for a bribe. And this was something that happened, regularly. And he supported his widowed mother, his 5 siblings, and his uncle. And he finally said no. The police then confiscated all of his produce. So he went to City Hall and he set himself on fire. And his death was what sparked the Arab Spring. This is the billboard across from, you can see where it is, across from the place where he died. And you can see as well that the graffiti is honoring the martyrs and calling for all Tunisians, saying the world is proud of what they're doing. Now, this is the monument to Mohamed Bouazizi. This is his fruit cart, and this is at the site where he set himself on fire. So, there is still an interest in Tunisia and across the region, even though the Arab Spring failed, in trying to find something different. These are my old slides. You didn't download the new ones. Okay, so these are 2 young men I met who had stood up at Tahrir Square, and they had been shot with BBs, and that was what the Egyptian police did to those who turned out on Tahrir Square, and they were blinded for the rest of their lives. And again, because it's difficult to find a job, and you can imagine. And there were a number of people, including a young doctor, who was blinded in both of his eyes and could never serve as a doctor again. So this, again, is kind of the sentiment across the region, that there's an energy and a sass and a desire for something different. And the problem in the Arab Spring was that it didn't have the leadership, it didn't have the political maturity or sophistication to figure out an alternative. They knew what they were against, but they couldn't figure out what they were for as an alternative, whether in a person or a party, an idea, a manifesto. And so they're kind of stuck in this purgatory in so many of these countries. Now, I want to talk about what happens. As Josh pointed out, this is another map of where ISIS prevailed in both Iraq and Syria. What I wanted to do is talk about how ISIS is still relevant today, and particularly over the last 2 months. In December, ISIS killed 3 Americans, and so the United States then has started new attacks. There have been 100 ISIS attacks against ISIS, killing over 50 of its fighters just in Syria. ISIS has also spread across Africa. In some ways, it's more dangerous there. But I wanted to introduce you to some of the ISIS fighters that I interviewed. This is Abu Islam. He was the emir of Kirkuk. He was the chief of ISIS operations in Kirkuk, which is an oil-rich region of northern Iraq. He was charged with dispatching suicide bombers, some as young as 12. He was also in charge of teaching them Islam, which stunned me because I asked him, as ISIS was losing territory, if he still believed in the caliphate. And he said, "Oh, yes. Even in the Bible, Jesus talked about all people converting to Islam." When I pointed out that Islam was founded 6 centuries after Jesus died, he replied, No. Even Abraham, the prophet before Jesus, said people will become Muslims. I have that interview on tape. What is interesting is he dispatched the young to be suicide bombers. But when it came his turn, he refused. And I asked him why, and he said it was because he thought of his mother. You know? This is Abu Yasser, a 21-year-old who personified the kind of thuggish side of ISIS. And so many of them were misfits, poorly educated, from remote regions, rural villages, and politically forgotten or marginalized. He told me a woeful story about being raised by his grandmother, shunned by his father, who had a second family, being unemployed except on uncle's farms. So when I asked him why he joined ISIS, he said, well, it was partly about the money, but they gave me direction and power and importance, and he felt they were helping him. But he also admitted, without remorse, to engaging in many atrocities. He had been one of the ISIS fighters who slaughtered 5,000 Yazidi men and women and raped many of the women and girls. The massacre was what led the Obama administration to start bombing ISIS for the first time and then redeploying US forces in Iraq. He also confessed, with no regret, for every person he became the chief operator in Baghdad after his period against the Yazidis. And he admitted to being responsible probably for the deaths of 400. And he said whenever he killed a man, he raped the mother or daughter. So those were the two, and you're supposed to cut this. So this is me in Syria, in Raqqa, which was the capital of ISIS. And this is a Moroccan who was the emir of morality in Syria. He told me about witnessing the stonings of 10 women and the burning of 40 Yazidi women who were put in a cage covered with fuel and set on fire. This is Farouk Asser, who had a prosthetic leg as a souvenir of a US airstrike. He was one of the very early recruiters of ISIS fighters, and he snuck them across the border from Turkey to Syria. This is an American, 43-year-old Liram Soleimani, who was from Chicago. He was sucked into ISIS by kind of the utopian promises. He wanted to live under Sharia, but he was also pretty much a lost soul, a misfit who couldn't keep a job. So ISIS offered him through the internet, the dark web, a job in engineering. So he took his wife and 3 children to Syria. This was the prison cell where one of many prison cells where the ISIS fighters were kept when they were captured, wall to wall. I kept this picture to show you because of the young boy in the middle, so you see the age range of those who fought for ISIS. So this is an empty cell and the blankets on the floor. Last month, the United States began transferring ISIS detainees who came from several countries but were in Syria. And the US has been taking them to Iraq, where the Iraqis have said they will hold them and try them, punish them, or whatever. US taxpayers are paying for the flights carrying these men, paying the Iraqis to hold them in prison, and paying for their trials and whatever happens to them. Human Rights Watch has warned that the last time the Iraqis held these kinds of trials, they gave them 10 minutes without lawyers, and most were sentenced to death. So you can see this is the aftermath in Mosul of the war to liberate this really important commercial center of Iraq. And if you look up close, you can see the sentiment that ISIS is really hated. Yet, Yet, as much as ISIS has failed, extremism generally in the region is still very viable. I often go to cemeteries to kind of count the losses, count the graves, see who's buried, what the dates were of the clashes they were involved in. There's a lot of information for a journalist in a cemetery. And this is the figures on the left. The figure on the left in the fatigues is Imad Mughniya, and his grave is right underneath. And he was the Hezbollah commander who was responsible for the bombings of 2 U.S. embassies and the Marine compound, which was the largest loss of U.S. military life in a single incident since Iwo Jima. I was there during those bombings, and I remember the sound of them going off. But Hezbollah is still, despite the huge number of losses, including Hassan Nasrallah, it is still a viable force. Now, yeah, this is the souvenir shop. Can you believe that Hezbollah runs? There's several of them. This is me with Naim Qassem, who is the head of Hezbollah now. I've seen him a couple of times, and I saw his predecessor, Hassan Nasrallah, as well. And, you know, Naim Qassem is his name, and he said just on Monday that he was not going to disarm on the terms laid down, even by the Lebanese government. And, you know, it is in the process rebuilding its capabilities. And in the meantime, Israel, for obvious reasons, it continues to go after it. Even though there was a ceasefire a year ago, Israel has launched 7,500 airstrikes and 400 ground intrusions. So now I want to get into conflicts and the way they linger in the region, and they shape not just linger in the past, but they continue to shape the mindset of people in the region. This is on the Green Line in Beirut, between where the Christians and the Muslims fought. There were gun turrets in here, and the building has become a museum to the war, and the fact that what happened was the war ended in 15-year war ended in 1990, but today the political leaders are the same warlords who fought that war. So conflict often converts just into politics. So this is another cemetery of the Palestinian territory. Palestinian fighters were buried here. For those young who don't recognize the man at the top, that's Yasser Arafat, who for a long time was the world's foremost terrorist, but after he made peace with Israel, won or shared a Nobel Peace Prize. You know, what struck me at the cemetery was how many have died and how many are still dying for a conflict that is no closer to being solved than at any time since 1948. So, so this is on the Golan Heights, and you get the sense of the tensions that are along the border between Israel and Syria as well. These are mock, obviously, but for anybody who goes up to the Golan Heights, they put on kind of show of kind of how, if they come under attack, what happens. I mean, now that they use, air power, but still. This is the sign along the border warning about mortal danger. And this is the barrier. You can see the Israeli flag and the Syrian flag, and reflecting the fact that these two countries, despite the change in leadership in Syria, are still very much at odds. So this is overlooking into Syria, which seems so very peaceful. And yet, this in some ways has more tension, because during the Assad, there was kind of an agreement. We as a nation won't go to war with you, Israel as a nation. We may help a lot of the proxies and so forth that go through or are based in Syria, but now you see the direct tensions between the two nations. Now, I've seen so many wars and seen, so usually I go running to someplace to shelter me. This was a time where I actually caught some stuff on tape. And what's is so striking is this was a moment I was seeing part of Syria being struck. And this was a guy, I sat on the hillside next to him, and he was watching the fighting that was going on in his village, town really. And he was pointing out, that's where his vegetable stall is. And then boom, we'd see some kind of explosion. He lost everything at 81 years old. And this is where we think of wars as the number who die, but the number who were left behind with nothing and have to start over is what always haunts me. So this is in Iraq, in Mosul. Again, this is a family that you see the older generation and the younger one with her bright red hijab and her owl and so forth. And the destruction in Mosul, this is driving along the Tigris River, where you can see the destruction on the other side, and this is a biblical place. So the damage in Mosul alone is estimated to be $50 billion. 138,000 homes were destroyed just on one half of the city. This is the University of Mosul Library. It was burned down during the war with ISIS, by ISIS, because it didn't want access to modern learning. This university and the library had been a hub for centuries of learning, and this library had manuscripts dating back centuries, including a few more than a millennia. And the library has since been rebuilt, but it has 20,000 books, and they're all new and they're all donations. There will never be rebuilding of this historic facility. So what's really striking is that wherever you go, you find moments or museums or memorials to those who have suffered. This was a memorial and a museum run by the Kurds of the torture they experienced. Haunting to me. Oh, these are the sorry. See, you didn't do my new slides. Okay. So I want to talk about refugees in a minute. I know you're going to hear more about that tomorrow. But to me, the first casualties of conflict are civilians. And there are around 6 million refugees from across the Middle East at the end of 2025. The largest number were in Syria. These were 2 Syrian kids I saw at a camp along the border with Turkey. This is how they lived. And the kids particularly are often limited in terms of education and health services, and what that means as they grow up and as they're the next generation. And being a refugee is not a one-day or one-month experience, and that's the danger. These camps become hotbeds for anger and frustration and potentially more. This is a woman at a Syrian refugee tent inside Lebanon. Again, more kids. The kids always haunt me. This is a mother I met who had not yet turned 20. She had 3 kids and was pregnant. And the one thing she said to me was, we have no access to health services, no access to family planning. And she said she didn't want to be continually pregnant at the age of 20. So this was a father who was trying to make money by doing drawings and artwork and selling them within the camp. These were his kids in the camp where they lived. And this is where they lived. They had one cord for electricity that powered an old television and a hand-powered sewing machine. There are no ways to make real income. This is Al-Hol, and this is again where you look at her teeth and you think what the health problem is for all these kids. And so Al-Hol has been the ISIS repository. It's basically kind of a detention camp, and the majority, 65% of the kids were under 18, and I think it was a quarter of them were under the age of 5. Last month, the Syrian government began transferring some of these, many of the families in Al-Hol, but in the chaos of the handover between January 20th and February 10th, hundreds and some say thousands escaped, and no one knows where they are. These are all ISIS families. And this is how they lived at Al-Hol. And the younger generation. So I want to talk very quickly about the troubled economies. One of the other places I often go are the garbage dumps, because they're a great place to try to understand how people are trying to make ends meet. You know, how many are there and who's there and so forth. This was in northern Iraq. And you can see how they scramble, the boys trying to scramble up into the garbage trucks to be there first to sort through the goods. Women, even conservative women, looking for, you can see one of them found a doll among things discarded. And they did this all day, every day, going through the garbage, and that was their job. So unemployment in the region is really stunning. And several people across the region, places like Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, and Yemen, have trouble getting basics, milk, cereal, grains, and meat. And underemployment, the way people have to come up with jobs. This was a guy in Kurdistan who had a sewing machine out on the street, and he would repair tennis shoes. Underemployment is a huge problem too. Youth unemployment in the region generally is 26% across 18 countries. That's twice the global average. You know, this is where kids are educated, but they end up in the kind of traditional rural family jobs. The problem is the gap that people, because of knowledge, access to information, images on the web, are quite visible. Hang on. This is a Porsche dealer in Tehran. You know, you see the poverty on one level, and you see the wealth on the other. And this is, again, a high-end camera shop in Iran, where you can get access to any of the latest goods in a sanctioned country. Again, this is Beirut, a nightclub. You see the wealth, the different lifestyle, the access to whether it's high-end designer gowns or you know, having fun. The idea of having fun for so many people is, especially the kids, is, oh yes, the motorcyclists, Phoenician riders in Beirut. But, you know, this again is where people in so many parts are living literally in the dirt. So, you didn't give the right slides. So I want to very briefly go through Iran. Suzanne will give you much better, and Vali did last night, but I wanted to give you a physical sense of what Tehran looks like, what the people look like. These are the two supreme leaders. The first, Ayatollah Khomeini, on your right, and the current supreme leader on the left. That's their tomb. I mean, I go down there every time I go to Tehran to try to understand, how many are turning out, is he still revered, and so forth. And except for the events where they pack, rent-a-crowds in the place, it's usually empty. I find a few pilgrims and some Western tourists, but not many. And people are supposed to put money through the grill. There are actually 2 men who dust the grill. But I also go to Friday prayers in Tehran, and one thing that strikes me in terms of who's there, who's still participating in the Islamic Republic, and the thing that strikes me is that it's all the elderly. You don't find the younger 2 generations at Friday prayers. The older women. The only young person I found was someone who brought a grandchild. Okay, I got to finish. So that's another cemetery. People still revere their dead. All right, so this is the American Embassy. Oh, one of the things that's interesting, very quickly, it doesn't go back. Oh, well, I'm stuck. One of the things that strikes me is the fact that there is a culture that, this is the artwork of a young artist in Iran. The basketball, Keith Urban, advertised in California, Village People you can buy, and the record in the flea market in Tehran, SpongeBob who greets you, the Jewish Society. Anyway, I've got to end. It always strikes me, this is Mosh Donald's, complete with a Mosh Donald's, Ronald McDonald. Manhattan Grill. We've seen all these. Oh, this does not go back. Oh, so that's my Middle East. Me and my. Anyway, thank you.